Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. Apologies for the late posting of this video. I was in Hyde Park yesterday afternoon and evening watching the Rolling Stones. Oh yeah, sometimes you've got to get your priorities right. And they were as good as when I saw them 32 years ago. I saw them in 1990. But they were sensational last night, I have to say. It was really funny because before they came on, I was actually following events in the candidates on my phone. And in particular, this game between Richard Rapport and Ian Nepomniachtchi, of course, Nepo leading the tournament going into this round. And this was fascinating. I was in Hyde Park. They weren't playing. This is a few hours before, but I couldn't believe what I was watching in this game. So Rapport with white goes into the Petrov. So the Petrov is Nepo's opening. Really interesting to see him play this, continuing well from the candidates in Yekaterinburg and also the World Championship match. And it seems to suit him pretty well because, well, he knows it backwards. That's absolutely clear. And it's interesting. Rapport selects this line. And frankly, this doesn't have a very good reputation for white. He tries to grab a pawn here. Well, he does grab a pawn. Knight g5. You can see there are threats here, but black's pieces are so well developed. I mean, these bishops in particular, and white's kingside, looks rather vulnerable now. And unsurprisingly, there is a way for black to react to this that gives black a very decent position, or well, let's just say equalizes, as we're going to see. And this is actually very well known. This is a forcing line, and it's not very deep into the game. So, it's not like this is sort of hidden research. It's not like one has to uncover this. A quick look at an engine will tell you that this is absolutely fine for black. And in fact, I mean, there have been some correspondence games played in this line. There was even a correspondence game played way back in the 1920s that featured, well, roughly this variation. In fact, that correspondence game went bishop d6 and also ended in a draw. But here, Nepo played bishop h3. And I repeat, this is not like anything earth-shattering. So basically, let's just sort of sum up this situation. White has grabbed this rook and threatens to develop very quickly. And if the queen gets out, then of course white is material up and is winning. But black has this quick counter-attack with bishop h3, while the queen, yes, the queen is in Siberia. So mate threatened. Pawn takes, and now this exposes white's king. Check. And another check. So you can see if white wants a draw, then this is just a draw by perpetual check. But Rapport here plays on. He plays f3. So he wants more. Now Nepo was playing these moves pretty quickly. Rapport was investing a lot of time. So it's very curious. So was he somehow surprised in his preparation? Or, I mean, I really don't know what was going on. It's very hard to explain because, as I said, this is not like a big secret, this line. Even though, there haven't been many contemporary over-the-board games, this is a well-known line to anyone researching the Petrov. So queen d3, in fact, this is still a draw. So obviously if the rook moves, then this one is taken. So king g2, Now, if black wants to try and trap the queen with queen d7, this doesn't work because white has bishop e3. Attacking the pawn, the queen is going to take here, the queen escapes and white is winning. So after king g2, black has to keep checking with queen g6. And the king goes back, there's nothing better, the king can't come here because, can't come to f2 because there'll be some kind of check here and the king gets chased into the middle. So the king has to go back. And queen d3, you can see we're repeating the position. So basically the game should end in a draw by repetition after this. And so on. And that was what Rapport should play. So yeah, just imagine the situation. I'm sitting in Hyde Park with my phone watching this game, thinking, oh well, this one's gonna finish very quickly, and I was sort of looking at other games, and then the next band came on. Well, one of the support bands came on, and you know they're pretty good. Watching there, I went off and grabbed a beer, and like an hour and a half later, I thought, okay, let's check in on the games, and I couldn't believe it when I saw that Rapport had played on with knight d2. Now, obviously black cannot force a draw by repetition here, but now the queen can come back to d7. And remember in the other line, white could play bishop e3, and then white's queen would escape. But that's not the case here, because obviously the knight blocks it. So this means that the queen is now trapped here, gives itself up. So we have a situation where white has two rooks against the queen. Now, in some situations, two rooks can be stronger than a queen. But here it's very different because there are targets for the queen to attack. So the king is exposed. This pawn is loose. This pawn is a little bit loose. There are loose pieces at the moment. Here, white isn't developed yet properly. So this is problematic. So for example, well, you know, an obvious move, what happens if white plays king g2? Just to guard this pawn and this one as well, looks solid enough. Now queen d4. It's a very annoying move. Hits this pawn. Not so easy for the bishop to develop because this one could be taken. And you can see how, you know, it's very easy for white's position to fall apart. Even when you give one of these pawns, there is still more stuff to attack. You know, the king is still loose. And the beautiful thing about black's position is that the king is absolutely safe. So white cannot counterattack here. This is the problem. Now, Rapport tried bishop f4, queen takes h3, so that's a very pleasant pawn to take. The queen's still hitting some nice things here, rook d1. So Rapport has developed the queen's rook, but still, it's a difficult position. It's very hard for these rooks to move forward. You know, it would be nice if white could establish a rook on the 8th, but obviously, you know, there's too much to take care of at the other end of the board. Nepo is playing quite quickly here, which certainly put the pressure on Rapport because he'd used up a lot of time. In fact, h5 is a good move here. He played h6, which is very calm. You know, it's a pragmatic move. Takes away the g5 square, gives the king an escape square. Bishop g3, and it's just very hard for white to control this initiative. Knight c5, good move. The knight comes back from the edge, and if knights are exchanged, then you know the bishop comes into play. So rook e1. Now knight e6. Yeah, looks like a nice square. a3. I mean, it's very hard for white to move forward here. And now h5. Well, okay, he gets there anyway. I mean, actually, you know, Nepo didn't spoil anything by delaying this one, and now there's something to hit here with the bishop. Rook d3, yeah. Queen comes back. And h4. So this h-pawn, as we've seen in so many games, becomes a very important attacking weapon. If that's captured, then the knight can come in. And now you just have to look at all the loose pieces in white's position. You know, the rooks don't protect each other. Knight back. Hits this, hits this. This is really unpleasant. So if, let's say, knight d2 to defend that one, that can be taken. Queen d3. You know, look at these loose pieces. You just can't protect everything. You know, the queen is just going to sweep round, and what a wonderful defensive position. It's like that Roman legion formation, you know, where they have their shields over their heads. Nothing can get through to the king, and that queen just sweeps around the board, you know, laying waste. So h4 just played, so that wasn't taken, but bishop b8. I guess it you know, it heads up the other end of the board where it can't be hit, but, well, now knight g5. Actually, Nepo plays it in a very simple way, very calm way. You know, the computer suggests other more complicated moves like c5 here, which is very strong. But, you know, Nepo was very pragmatic, played very quickly, so the knight comes in. Rook here. Now, not knight f3 because rook f1 pins, but knight takes e4, and the queen swoops in, threatening h3. And once again, you can see that pawn will just disturb. Well, let me show you. For example, bishop takes. Then I do believe that one is winning. Yeah, it just completely disrupts white, threatening mate, and rook takes, then queen takes rook. So h3 to block that pawn, but now this one is a weakness. Bishop e7, the bishop emerges and joins in the attack. Bishop g5, yeah, nasty. So, you know, these rooks protect each other, but that's about it. You know, they can't actually perform any active duties at all. And once they move, then you can see, you know, these pawns will be vulnerable. Bishop g1, queen d2, rook e2, and queen d3. There we go. So the rook has been budged from the third rank, and now these pawns are vulnerable. Bishop e3 blocks, bishop f6. So that bishop is actually very useful in the attack. In fact, this one is vulnerable as well. White's bishop. You know, the white pieces can only protect each other, but they're going to be disturbed any moment. And now Nepo has broken through to the king. And the game finished like this. h3, very nice. Again, the h-pawn basically decides the issue. And bishop h4, that was the final move of the game. Bishop h4, nice move actually. So there's going to be a threat to the rook here. So for example, if bishop h2, then we give a check, and the bishop takes the rook. Or rook f2, here's a nice move, h2. Just, you know, white is always disturbed, whatever. Rook takes, and that ends that. So a very curious game, I have to say, and you know, coming back to this position where, well, here, where Rapport could have made a draw by repetition, you know, I applaud his enterprise and his spirit, but really, he must have felt this incredible pressure to play on when you have the white pieces. When you make nothing with white from the opening, then psychologically that's very difficult. It feels like a failure, but you have to be pragmatic. And once black won the queen, got to this position, of course Rapport realised this was a difficult position, but he just felt, well, I've got to try it. But I'm afraid that was the wrong decision. He should have just made a draw and moved on, accepted it wasn't the best day he could have had, but still better than losing. And I have to say, Nepo's play after that with the initiative, well, we know he's deadly with the initiative, and he was on deadly form in this game. So that was a pretty early win. Question was, could Fabiano Caruana also win to keep pace with the leader Nepo? So I'm going to look at Fabiano Caruana's game against Rajabov in a separate video coming to you soon.